Everyone, and welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're cracking open the visual playbook on a chapter that covers one of the absolutely most dynamic, fast-paced team sports out there, KHO-KHO. If you've ever watched a match and found yourself wondering about the sheer split-second agility and honestly, the intense teamwork required to just survive on that court, well, you're in the right place. We're going to break down the fundamental skills of this incredible Indian sport, taking those textbook techniques and translating them into a visual guide. So let's get ready to move.
Okay, let's jump right in. At its core, KHO-KHO is essentially a thrilling, high-speed game of cat and mouse, played at an absolute dead sprint. It's a pure competition of agility, speed, and ridiculous leg strength. You've got your two teams, right? One team acts as the chasers. They're the ones actively trying to hunt down and tag the opposing players. The other team? They're the defenders, and they are relying on pure, unadulterated evasion to avoid getting tagged. It's just this continuous, high-stakes rotation of chasing and defending, and it demands absolute teamwork.
Now, to really grasp the intensity of KHO-KHO, we've got to talk about the physical reality of the court. For sub-junior boys and girls, this entire match unfolds within a super precise arena, exactly 14 by 24 square meters. To put that into perspective, that is significantly smaller than a standard basketball court. In this enclosed space, there is literally nowhere to hide. The panic is real. Every single maneuver, every burst of speed, and every dodge happens within these strict dimensions. So your spatial awareness, it has to be just as sharp as your physical speed.
So here's our playbook for today's explainer. First, welcome to KHO-KHO. Second, the sitting stance. Third, the chaser's toolkit. Fourth, the defender's strategy. Fifth, mastering the pole. And finally, we'll wrap up with the 3-2-3 chain. Moving right along, section 2, the sitting stance. Building the foundation.
So, before we can even think about sprinting, we actually have to learn how to sit. Mastering this sport completely begins with a perfectly executed, grounded starting position because, you can't explode into a sprint if your base is weak. Let's walk through this kinesthetically. Imagine you're in the designated block drawn on the dirt. First rule, you don't sit flat. No way. You sit up on your toes, totally ready to spring. Second, you place your hands on the ground, but you don't just mash your palms flat. You form a literal bridge with your fingers and thumb. Finally, you lean just a little bit forward. The absolute key here is that your body weight has to be perfectly balanced between your toes and your hands. You're essentially a coiled spring staring straight ahead, just waiting to be released.
And let me tell you, holding that coiled position takes immense lower body strength. It burns. That's exactly why training for this involves some seriously intense lead-up activities. Players will run circuit drills just like the one you see here, holding that perfect sitting stance for 20 seconds, and then immediately bursting into a 10-meter frog jump, followed right up with a 10-meter duck walk. I know it might sound a little slightly ridiculous, but trust me, it is grueling. It builds the exact explosive leg strength you need to launch out of those blocks the very second you're called into action.
All right, section 3, the chaser's toolkit, offense in motion.
Let's shift our perspective for a second. Imagine you're the chaser now. This brings us to the most iconic mechanic of the entire game, giving coal. Your job is to hunt, sure, but you can't do it alone. You have to activate your teammates who are waiting in that sitting stance we just learned. This is your handoff, and the rules are incredibly strict. To activate a teammate, you must physically tap them on the back while simultaneously shouting the word coal. It's a completely synchronized oral and physical touch signal. And on top of that, physically, when you deliver this signal, at least one of your legs must remain behind the cross lane. If you mess up the timing, the touch, or even your foot placement, the whole play just breaks down.
But what's really fascinating here is the psychological warfare happening beneath the surface. Giving KHO isn't just some physical relay, it's a total mind game. There are 3 distinct tactical variations you can use: the simple touch KHO, the early KHO, and the late KHO. By intentionally varying when and how you tap your teammate, you completely disrupt the defender's ability to anticipate who is coming after them next. You've got to keep the defense guessing.
Once you are actually activated, though, it's all about straight-line speed. Maintaining proper running form as a chaser is absolutely vital. You need an upright posture with your chest and head straight, keeping your eyes laser-focused right on the defender. Your arm swings should be totally natural, moving back and forth straight and parallel to the ground. Players run endless acceleration drills just to practice taking a quick start, gaining speed swiftly so they can close that gap before the defender even knows what hit them.
Which brings us to section 4, the defender's strategy, evasion and agility.
Okay, let's flip the script again. Now you're the defender.
You're relying entirely on agility, quick footwork, and strategic movement just to survive out there. Check out the deliberate leaning postures used here. As a defender, you literally can't just run away. You have to deceive. This technique is actually called leaning. You'll deliberately lean your body and head in one direction to trick the chaser into thinking that's exactly where you're going, but then you rapidly push off and run in the complete opposite direction. It's all about creating an opening, wrong-footing the chaser, and slipping right past them.
To navigate the court unpredictably, defenders utilize two distinct types of zigzag running: straight running and sideways running. You don't just run in some predictable little circle. No. You combine quick forward lunges, backward lunges, and lateral sidesteps to change directions on an absolute dime. Doing this makes it incredibly difficult for the chaser to lock onto your path, essentially turning that confined 14 by 24 meter court into a maze of your own making.
Next up, Section 5, Mastering the Pole, Advanced Maneuvers.
Directing our attention to the ends of the court, this is where the physics of the game get truly kinetic. This is where the most advanced, dramatic, physical maneuvers take place. First up is the pole turn. When a chaser approaches the pole to chase a runner around it, they don't just run a wide circle. That totally wastes time. Instead, they execute this precise maneuver. As you reach the pole, you plant your inner foot, the one closest to the pole, firmly into the dirt. You then use that planted foot as an anchor, rotating your entire body in a sharp pivot motion. This allows for a massive, instantaneous change of direction without losing a single ounce of momentum.
Now, if the pole turn isn't quite enough to reach the defender, players resort to this, the pole dive. Just look at the full body extension required here. The player grips the pole, uses their free arm and torso to generate this huge sweeping movement, and literally dives out parallel to the ground to secure a tag. Once the dive is done, they have to push off with their outer foot and both hands, rotating safely back to the ground. It takes immense bravery, incredible core strength, and perfect footwork to avoid just smashing into the pole.
And finally, Section 6, the 3-2-3 chain, Ultimate Team Defense.
So, we've spent a lot of time on individual physical skills so far: stances, sprinting, pivoting, diving. But KHO-KHO is ultimately won and lost on team strategy. Enter the 3-2-3 chain. This is a highly specific defensive formation where players actively form a barricade. You place 3 chasers in the front line, 2 in the middle, and 3 at the back. Every single player has a designated critical role based exactly on their lined-up order. And here's the catch: if one person steps out of sync, the entire barrier collapses.
Looking at it from a top-down view, you can really see how the 3-2-3 formation completely controls the spatial flow of the game. It practically turns individual players into this impenetrable, shifting web. They adjust their positions collectively based entirely on the movements of the runners, constantly shrinking the available space and trapping the opponent. It's basically physical chess, but played at 100 miles an hour.
Which brings us right to the end of our chapter. We've covered the sweat, the strategy, and the mechanics. But the source material leaves us with this really wonderful, vital question to reflect on. Will you appreciate the performance of the opponent team player, and why? Because at the end of the day, when you understand the sheer physical toll and the brilliant tactical mind required to perfectly execute a late KHO or a gravity-defying pole dive, you kind of can't help but respect the person across the line from you. True mastery of the sport elevates way beyond just winning. It's about honoring the game and those who play it well. Something to think about the next time you step onto the court. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.